Let me make sure I have this. Hi. Adrian. Nice to meet you. What's your name? Adrian. Very nice to meet you. Hi, I'm Sarah. Sarah. Nice to meet you. I'm Adrian. And then Deepa? Deepa. Very nice to meet you. I think it's from the microphone. Oh, that's. Oh, I thought that was like a. So we just be loud. About how loud should we be? Loud. Okay. Like because these are our only mics, right? Yeah. Those are our only mics, so it's pretty quiet in the back. So project is good. So we are in the room, just our voices. So project to the very last person in the room and make sure that person, the people in the back can hear you. It's going to be standing room only in the back for this session. Hi, come on in if you can. Come on in. Welcome to our session. Alright, everyone ready? Hello everyone, welcome to the final session of the 12th edition of the International Youth Conference. This session is titled Sustainability, Institutionalizing Youth Voices in Environmental Policy, which is a very pressing and relevant issue as of right now. So I look forward to hearing these experts' insights on it. Kelly, take it away. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. We've got a full house here today. Thank you so much for being here, and also for everyone who's joining us online. We see you. This is for you as well, and so thank you for being here. My name is Kelly Crisp. I'm the Vice President of the International Youth Conference and the International Organization of Youth. IYC, the conference that we're all at right now, is our flagship initiative. And IOY, the larger organizing body, is a diplomatic accelerator, and we are all for youth leadership and public speaking opportunities for everyone, and diplomacy education. So for me, I have a background in writing and education, and I really like to activate our educational programming around diplomacy, especially public diplomacy and creating personal agency for young people. Okay, so with me today, we have on the Sustainability, Institutionalizing Youth Voices in Environmental Policy, some young experts here. We've got YY over here, coming to us from Columbia CEPA's program, the CEPA program, with a focus on energy security, energy finance, geopolitics, climate policy. YY is a Global Energy Fellow at the Center on Global Energy Policy.
CGEP, at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs, and then develops evidence-based research to help address the world's most challenging energy and climate problems. Then we have Sarah Hill. Sarah is an outreach and response coordinator with Change the Chamber, a nonpartisan coalition of young adults with 100+ student groups and other allied organizations. And within their campaign, they advocate for evidence for science-based climate legislation and pursue meaningful change. Agniadima Rachmawati is an Atlantic Fellow and a former Gender and Climate Finance Officer at UNDP, and is currently a Senior Fellow at the Equity Initiative Fellowship and the Atlantic Fellows. We have Adrienne Day, who is a career journalist specializing in science and sustainability. She's the content manager and editor for the Columbia Climate School and has been an editor and writer and features and galleries and profiles and essays in science journalism science and climate journalism for a long time. She is currently at the Columbia Climate School as a journalist. And then we have Pavit Thakar. Pavit is a young leader and an executive director at Save Drop. That's savedrop.org, advancing practical solutions to address water waste effectively. One such solution is the use of water recirculation pumps. So these innovative water pumps are game changers when it comes to conserving water, especially while waiting for the shower to heat up. Something like that is very useful, and Pavita is taking actions right now to present real world solutions that make a difference today. And I just want to say thank you so much to these panelists for joining us and for your expertise in advance. Okay, so let's go around and hear from each of us. Please, let's start with Adrienne.
Oh gosh.
Why?
Let's see. Sure. Are we just going to introduce ourselves?
Yeah, so please introduce yourself and each of us, and we'll just go around and I'll give you the floor and just let's hear a little statement about what you have going on.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Adrienne Day. I'm currently the editor of State of the Planet, which is the platform for research and news of the Columbia Climate School. So we publish a lot of research. The Climate School is connected to a lot of different schools, like SEPA, for example. So we work with them a lot. We publish a lot of research that comes out of SEPA. A lot of, faculty, researchers, students, anything that falls within the Climate School umbrella, basically. Should I talk a little more about?
Yeah, it's just we're talking today about institutionalizing youth voices and environmental policy and the sustainability there.
Yeah,
and I know that that's like a lot of what you're doing with your work at the Climate School.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that for sure. Research. There's always been an issue of getting having everyone's voices heard is an age-old problem. So this has been going on for millennia. And certain, especially marginalized communities not having their voices heard. So, having youth voices not elevated to the national discourse is a big problem. That's something that we try to address at Columbia. I work with a lot of students to get their stories out there, their research. Sometimes they write what we call viewpoints, which is like basically like an opinion piece. So I think what's interesting, what I wanted to quickly touch on was how social media has sort of upended this whole system of traditional media, which is what I come from. I actually come out of a pop culture background. I used to work at Spin Magazine. I used to work at Entertainment Weekly. I worked at Detail, a lot of sort of trashy publications, but fun. Bathroom reading, right? They used to call it. But I have an environmental science background as well. So I sort of reverted back to that about a decade ago. But just to say that traditional media is now using a lot of the platforms that social media brought about, right? So using those channels, which are fantastic. But the issue with that is that unless you have a zillion followers, it's still hard to get your story out. So I think in this way, traditional media is really, really useful. Just think of one major story that we broke was research about microplastics and nanoplastics in water bottles. Did anyone hear about that at all? Is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a huge piece. It was basically picked up by every major outlet. And that's something that originated at, well, our geosciences faculty, where they do that kind of research, but published on State of the Planet. So it's small but mighty. There's a lot of, it has its tentacles in a lot of places. And I think it's really useful if you are trying to get your story, your research, your idea, your policy paper, whatever, to start with something like that. And as an editor, I love working with younger people to shape their ideas, their narratives. There's more I can say on that, but I'll shut up for now.
Okay, we'll come back to you. Wai, please, you have the floor.
Okay, so hi, I'm Wai. So I'm from Taiwan, and before coming to study in Columbia, I actually work in an NGO called Environmental Justice Foundation. So it's a global NGO, but I founded the climate campaign in Taiwan. So we started to work on amending Taiwan's national climate change law. So before 2015, so the law was passed in 2015. So at first, it's only like mandating 50% of reduction by the 2050. So obviously, it's not enough for us to reach net zero. So when I founded the campaign in 2020, we found an opportunity out there to amend the law. So because it was the time that EU CBAN was being proposed, and so debrief the board. So EU is doing this border adjustment to kind of level this playing field for high emitting manufacturer and also their local companies. So they are trying to put a fee on other countries' goods shipping into EU. But if that good is already taxed in the country, then it will be deducted when it enters EU. So for the Taiwanese government, it makes sense that they keep that money in Taiwan instead of going to EU. So we found that could be a chance because we don't have a tax levy, tax on carbon beforehand. So for us, our way is to try to incorporate as many demands as we want, including 2050 net zero and also whole of government approach. And also because our climate change law in the past only focused on mitigation, but we want to expand that to focus also on adaptation and also human rights-based approach into our climate policy. So we use that opportunity and also like our government's will to support human rights and also to position ourselves as a human rights defender country. So in 2023, the law was successfully passed to include the demands I mentioned. And I think the lesson learned from this is that so I actually joined this climate youth movement back in 2012 when I was still in college. And at the time, I think it wasn't the social media was not big. Later on, as the Fridays for Future wave, so I'm the previous wave of youth movement. And at that time, you only have your peers. You talk to each other. You find ways to let your voice being heard, to participate in policy making. But actually, it's quite frustrating because the group was quite small. It wasn't such a big movement yet at the time. So, but I find that very good that because all of us have each other, have our peers. So actually, at the end, we kind of all work in that. Like my friends entering a very important MP's office, which made us successfully propose a bill, and also some of my friends work in other more prominent local NGOs. So together with all of our peers, we formed this kind of local movement and finally amend the law. So I think the youth movement, it shouldn't be viewed as only youth. You can expand your impact when you enter different aspect of the society, different organization within the system. And finally, you can find ways to change it. And actually, the friend I mentioned who entered the MP's office, she eventually wrote our country's 12 strategy to reach net zero. So it's our national policy. And actually, back in 2012, none of us would thought about that. So I think it's a very encouraging story, kind of, and just to be persistent and try to find opportunities and any ways you can get into the system and change it.
Okay, let's go now to Vic. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. My name is Pavit Takar. I'm in 8th grade and I'm 12. So first of all, I wanted to thank all of the IYC organizers, the president, vice president, all of the people who made IYC possible, and all the participants that are here today, all of you guys. I never fail to find inspiration here. I was here last year for IYC 10 in New York. And I never fail to find inspiration from all of the wonderful ideas presented at IYC. I volunteer and contribute to 2 nonprofit organizations. One is called Recycle My Battery, and one is called Save Drop. And I'm excited to share my experience over the past 4 years working with these 2 organizations over the time that we have today. Save Drop is an organization that was founded about a year ago. Save Drop advocates for a prevalent issue today, which is about water conservation. So normally when you go into the shower, you have to wait about 1 to 2 minutes for hot water to come out. This wastes almost 10,000 gallons of water per year. So at Save Drop, we advocate for a system called a recirculation pump. And a recirculation pump, what it does is it cuts that waste down significantly, almost to zero. And what we're trying to do is make recirculation pumps mandatory in all households across the US through a petition that the founder of Save Drop, Nithya Tamanna, has started. And the other organization that I volunteer for is Recycle My Battery. Normally, when our batteries run out of charge, we normally just throw them away. Unfortunately, what this does is it causes the toxic chemicals inside of a battery to leak into the soil and the water, and it harms our environment. So we propose and are advocating for a alternative, which is battery recycling. And our organization's mission is to raise awareness about why battery recycling is such an important issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Pavit. That is fascinating, and I really appreciate your work, and thank you for your kind words to the IYC. Okay, and Sarah, you have the floor.
Tough one to follow up. Hi, I'm Sarah. As you can see, I'm really trying to project. My pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm a National Climate Fellow with a nonprofit, nonpartisan online organization called Change the Chamber. We meet to sort of combat the rhetoric of the fossil fuel lobby. They currently have a lot of sway, especially over the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, as well as, unfortunately, the chambers of government in the U.S., as well as across many countries. So I have been leading the Environmental, Social, and Governance, or ESG, campaign within Change the Chamber, but we also have a team called the Environmental Changemakers, similar to how we call changemakers here, and we have a free online training called How to Become an Environmental Changemaker that's all about empowering individuals to make the environmental change that we need. A lot of what, I know we had a fellow attend what was going on in the UN this week. A lot of what she saw was depressing, not hopeful. What we need now, more than anything, is hope. We need to know that we can get these things done. And speaking personally, I was struggling for a while to enter the full-time employed climate space after being in the part-time nonprofit climate space. And a couple months ago, I was finally able to do that. So I now work to get businesses to have their own energy efficiency projects. So it feels very rewarding to no longer just be advocating for climate solutions, but be working in the climate solution space, implementing these solutions. And that's really what we all need to be doing. Thank you.
Okay, great, and thank you so much. And let's see, we have Agnia Dima Rajmawani. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you so much. So, first of all, thank you so much everyone for having me here. This is my first time attending the International Youth Conference, and I found like youth forums like this are always magical. So back in 26, so I'm from Indonesia. Back in 2016, I was youth advisory panel for UNFPA Indonesia. I advocate for child prevention of child marriage and also sexual reproductive health at the time, and I was studying at the public health, and I don't have anyone I know working at the UN or anyone I know working in the advocacy. And in that space, in that youth forum, I found like my mentors, I found the peers, people that are I'm currently like really look up to. And so this kind of forum, I'm really happy to be here. So I'm currently also a student at the Columbia CPAM in the same program with YY. My focus is on gender and climate change. So after my college degree in public health, I worked in UNDP Indonesia, working on gender responsive climate budgeting. So in the intersection of gender equality and climate finance. And then I work in the venture capital, working on ESG due diligence and investments. So as a former youth and still youth advocate until now, I still be in touch with like my friends and my peers who are working directly with youth on the ground. And what I heard from the youth in Indonesia, sometimes we are often being tokenized in this conversation. Climate change negotiation often don't equal us youth, and a lot of difficult terminologies working in climate change, like a lot of difficult terms in climate financing, and sometimes youth are not part of the conversation. And this is something that I think we all need to change. And how us for like someone who already work like me, for example, can actually extend this knowledge to like youth and like more young people, so we all can better advocate with evidence, with facts, and also bring our own experience and live stories in our own countries. In Indonesia, our main problem is we sometimes experience drought. We sometimes experience like food scarcity. We sometimes our rice paddies is like suffering from climate change, but sometimes we also suffer from floodings. And we're even in a few years now, my home city, Jakarta, maybe will be underwater because we will be sinking under the sea level. So I think these are the experience that we all know will happen soon in the future if we don't do anything about it. And I think youth are the very, very person, the very community that can move these things forwards. We've seen youth protests changing a lot of things. We, from Indonesia, we also have protests against our government in Indonesia, and like we see some very great change will happen soon because we actually speak up in social media. We have the power of social media, we have the power of our community, and I feel like that's very magical, and that is the power of youth. Us, like sometimes us who already work in some institution, we cannot be as free as youth to speak up on our own. So that is like I think something that we can talk more in this conversation.
Right, yes, thank you so much. Okay, great. So thank you for that. And I have lots of questions for you already. So let's go back to Adrian. You mentioned earlier, you spoke about some of the stories, like the plastics story that it really caught on to traditional media. And I want you to talk a little bit about why that story was so impactful or effective, and what made it really appeal to such a big audience.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I'm kind of blown away by all of you. Like, I don't, we write about the research, we cover it, or I do mostly editing these days, but I don't actually do it. So like, I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Me too.
But so, you know, I can't speak to the research being done, but I can talk about like the levers that you would pull to get a story out there. So what made the microplastics and plastic bottles and nanoplastics too, because that's the real issue or one of the big problems, is that it was relatable to almost everyone. Like, who here hasn't had a sip of water out of a water bottle? Like, none of us, right? We've all done that, and the fact that there's so many of these microplastics now, you know, in the bottles and thus in our bodies is something that everyone can relate to. So making a story relatable is huge. Like, I can pretty much tell off the bat when I get a pitch like what is going to take off and what isn't. Not always. Sometimes I'm surprised, but that's a huge part of it. Yeah, so that's what I would say on that.
I want to say to that, when you're creating a narrative, I've noticed this with writing in my own career, when you're creating a narrative, it really helps to bring a human aspect to the story and to situate whatever is the story, you know, whatever is happening in the story in a way that appeals to the reader as a human being. And something you also mentioned is that you had a policy that you shifted to a human rights element of that policy as well. Maybe that was like a repositioning of the message or some, I don't know how that idea came up, but it sounds like that also unlocked like another level of success because you were very successful with getting the, you know, policy amended.
Yeah, I think I second to what Raven said. I totally agree with that because that's also the tactic that we use. So actually, my organization is like an environmental and human rights organization. So we campaign through documenting what's happening on the front line and bring that to decision maker. And so I actually kind of co-produced two very short films in Taiwan to document people impacted by climate change. So one featuring farmers who are impacted by droughts. So actually, it was a very bad policy decision that because when we face a huge drought, the government wants to save water for chip production, and they didn't notice the farmer, and they just shipped the water. So the rice just died in the dry paddy. And the second story was so actually there are a lot of indigenous people in Taiwan, and some groups of them actually do fishing a lot and they used to pass down this traditional knowledge to through generation how to calculate the date that there will be a lot of fish, maybe through like the tidal wave, through the moon. And that pattern has been severely changed by climate change. So for them, it's actually a very weird situation that they don't know how to teach the younger generation what to do with that. So actually, that risk a loss of their culture. And I think these two stories actually bring the real impact to people and to the decision maker that might be something they didn't think about, they didn't feel that strongly. And I think after they watch the video, they actually feel it, and that makes the conversation more like humanized. So they are more willing to consider the human rights aspect, and they know the need to assess the human rights impact of climate change.
Yeah, and I think that thank you for sharing that about the films that you use because that connects immediately with people who want the story aspect of it to make it, you know, make sense to them. And it's sort of similar to what I was looking at the website for Save Drop, and I think what's really effective is that, you know, these are youth who are representing this idea. I mean, this is an idea for a solution that you can activate right now in your home, and it creates an impact right away, right? And so one of the things that I think would be inspiring to other youth your age is the fact that you're the executive director of this, you know, organization, and also your president is also a very young youth. Yeah, so I think that appeals already because it represents that these are the change makers who are creating solutions right now. And I think that establishes so much authority. So I'm wondering, now that you're in this space and you've been in this room a couple of years now, what advice do you have for other kids who might have a great idea, just like, you know, yours, and want to get involved or get a group together to really represent that idea and create a solution?
So I think that a really important piece of getting your idea to follow through is to always grab opportunities and never give up. So, for example, recently I was on a call with the former CEO of an organization called Call to Recycle, and it's the largest recycling organization in the U.S. and Canada. And he gave me one point that was really impactful, and that it was that we should never give up and we should always keep trying, because it's never whenever we're reaching out to someone, whatever our initiative might be or whatever we're trying to do, it might not always be at the top of their list, but it's always important that we keep trying and we always make sure that we never give up on what we're trying to do. So, for example, this is an example that I recently had. I'm trying to implement getting battery boxes in all the schools in a city called Hoboken, and they've supported me and they've given me a grant in order to put battery boxes in all Hoboken schools. And I'm trying with other cities as well. But the important thing is that even though we're not receiving a response just yet, we still keep persisting and always trying to make sure that we can follow through. So my one key takeaway would just be never give up and keep following through with the idea that we have.
Yeah, excellent advice. Thank you. I think the follow through is so important because it's you have to continue to show up, and you have to continue to even following up from meetings and things like that. You always have to follow up, and I think that that's one thing that really ensures success for the people who succeed over the people who have a great idea and then they don't succeed. It's really just about following up. A lot of it is. And so, but for Sarah, I was thinking this is a good pivot to what you were saying, because you mentioned having just secured your first, full-time job in this space. And I was thinking about how maybe having changed the chamber, that building such a community and a solid base for you, wondering if that helped you to, create a community and create some momentum for your career going into, you've got the thing that everybody wants, which is a full-time job. In a job that's, rewarding to do.
I really do credit Change the Chamber with helping me secure this position, not because they directly connected me to it, but because coming out of college, I graduated during the pandemic. So it was a bit of a tough space, even mental health wise, as well as for the job market. So for a bit, I was unsure of what my next step was going to be. But it was actually my dad who forwarded me the opportunity to volunteer with Change the Chamber. And so I committed myself to it, and I got as involved as I could. And after seeing how dedicated I was to the space, our advisor offered me more of a position, which was to take on the role of leading the environmental, social, and governance campaign. So that was the next thing I dedicated myself to. And then I also applied to grad school. I was able to attend online the UConn Masters of Energy and Environmental Management, that program. And while I was there, when I was in my last semester, I needed an internship in order to complete the program. So I reached out to my advisor because I was talking to her and saying, I'm struggling a bit to find the right internship. So it was amazing. She is the president of the U.S. Partnership for Education for Sustainable Development, and at the time was working on a recruitment toolkit for HVAC and workers in the clean energy space. And then I think it's really fitting now, looking back, because helping design and publish that recruitment toolkit has really now clearly led me to the job that I'm in, because it was my first experience working in the clean energy space, working with some of the manufacturers and trade allies that I'm now working with in my paid, not a nonprofit job. And then I think another layer of community that really helped me land this job was I took the climate-based fellowship. So that helped because there was specific job instructions, job training, basically. Basically, the one that I think helped me the most was the strategies for interviewing. And I can't think of the acronym right now, but that really helped to take a question and not just be overwhelmed with it, but think, when have I done this before and what did I do? So that, and just having the community, the people who are all trying to make sure that we have climate solutions and have a healthy planet to live on in the future. Make sure, like what you spoke about, we don't all go underwater, because that is a fear, and we know that even if we act now, that could still happen. So we have to work on both mitigation and adaptation. And I'll stop there.
Okay, all right. Thank you. That's practical advice, and yeah, that's great. Seeking out skills too. I mean, I think you mentioned that you know, looking for interview skills. Something very practical is always going to be worth trying. Yes, that's great advice. And Agnia, you were talking about I know that you have experience at the United Nations in that realm, and it is sort of an exclusive space, and we have just, you know, the International Organization of Youth and IYC. We're lucky enough to have UN partners, and we do a lot of UN related programming and things like that. So I know what you mean by, and it's easy to see the tokenism that's going on for youth in the United Nations space, right? And I know what you mean when you say that. And I'm wondering if, and I'm sure that many of you know exactly what that's like as well. And I'm wondering if you have any, you know, practical solutions, because it does sound like you found ways to organize and to get youth voices heard. And I'm wondering what ways can we all, you know, sort of benefit from whatever wisdom that you have.
Yes. What a difficult question.
I know, it's not an easy one.
But it's like, this is also part of my conversation actually with some of the youth delegates that actually came from Indonesia to attend the previous days meetings at the UN for the Youth Action Platform, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
And I feel like one of the discussion that we had is like, there has to be a formal legalized institution for like youth delegate to come from every country, because for Indonesia case itself, we don't have our own mechanism to bring youth delegate who actually speak on behalf of youth. So it's always someone who, for example, someone who happened to be studying in New York, so like they don't really have a connection with the grassroots movement in the country, and that is, I think, very a great challenge that we need to overcome. How to bridge from this privileged youth who are studying outside of the country with the one who's actually part of the grassroots movements. And one of the example, if so the government actually has one mechanism, which is, it's called Musrembang. Musrembang is like a youth dialogue, but it's in the city level, provincial level, and national level. But sometimes this platform, it's been long of it's an old platform from decades ago, but usually people use it for a political interest. So they want to, for example, they want to become something, and I mean, it's not wrong, but I think sometimes the youth issues are sometimes like left out in the conversation. And in the platform itself, if we actually ensure the inclusiveness of the youth, so we ensure people from youth from minority backgrounds, from different sexual orientation, youth from rural, they all get represented in the youth forum and they can actually speak on their behalf. I think that will be a very great mechanism to start from the country level first, and then the country can collect all these youth voices and then bring them to the UN level. So like it has to be from bottom up, I think. So that's the
All right, so a grassroots, bottom-up approach to, organizing and getting your voices heard. All right, I appreciate that. That's a very good insight. So we have time to take some questions from the audience. If you do have questions, we would love, with the panel of experts here, we would love to hear from you. Questions from you in the room and also questions from any of our online viewers. I know that we have, which one? The one that is right here. Okay. So, so the question from an online person, and I just want to say thank you so much for engaging with the online platforms. If you are watching from home or from your school or your village, we are so happy that you're joining us. So we have a question: what are the most common barriers that young people face in influencing environmental policy, and how can these be addressed? So common barriers that young people face, I think all of our panel has different, face different ones.
I can speak from a Change the Chamber perspective because we do have a congressional and corporate outreach team. So we meet regularly with elected officials and try to influence their policy. And I know there's the basic barrier of we are youth. So how do we get them to listen to us? But we always bring it back. We try to have someone from their district that they represent. We try to have, I forget what they're called, but one of them at every meeting so that we can directly say, this will influence and get you reelected if that's something you're looking for. And then I think that's a good strategy to get them to listen, but I know a lot of the time politics, of course, comes into it. And again, I can tie it back to fossil fuel interests and the money that is going into influencing elected officials to vote in the ways that things that are not in our own interests may want. I sort of got sidetracked.
Yeah, no, I hear you. We all do. Yes, okay, so that's great advice. And I was also thinking about what Agnia said, because I think that the question is, how do you also institutionalize the youth voice in policymaking? So that really means like a transition from, well, I have an idea to, I want meaningful engagement with policymaking spaces like the United Nations and beyond. And I think that, and I mean, Adrian, maybe you can jump in here, because for anyone, you also have, YY, you have some experience with this with storytelling. Yeah, please.
I mean, the one thought I had is that also, I think, I'm not a youth myself, shockingly, but I remember being one.
Intergenerational
voices.
panel.
But I remember being young, and I remember struggling to be taken seriously. And that is a huge issue, and I recognize that. I will add to that I think passion speaks volumes. If you are really moved by a topic, you care about it, you convey your passion for it in a way that other people can connect with. I think that will do a lot to get you recognized.
So I have some maybe suggestions for that.
Great.
So first, you have to be very aware of the process. Like, for example, if you are pushing for a bill, like you have to be very aware of what stage is it at, and also know who to talk to at that stage and what message you are delivering to them. So that links to my second point, to be like understanding the narrative, like how people frame this topic now, like how the fossil fuel industry framed it, and how can we reframe that, and how can that speak to that person's like incentive, like whether it's like the people from that person's district, or whether the public opinion on that person. So like I think it all comes with how you communicate, and also I think you actually have a very strong uh, advantages in this. So I think the third is to position yourself to fit into that. So instead of thinking ourselves as youth, how about thinking ourselves as people who are good at social media compared to them? And actually, they need that. So if they feel that, okay, so if I cooperate with you, if I take your demands, you will post a super fun reels for me, then why not, right? Like for that person, that's definitely a plus. And if that's close to the election, if that's close to something big events, then that would be a very huge opportunity. So I think, yeah, that would be kind of a rethinking of how youth can position ourselves.
Right. I like that they use the word reframing because I was just thinking of how you, yes, just even reframing in your statement what youth is or how to, present being a youth. Anytime you have a problem, you can reframe it, when you're trying to create solutions. And we have a room full of solutions thinkers here. And reposition it so you're having the conversation you want to have instead of the conversation that is ongoing and that they're already having and is maybe very tired. Yeah. And I think for being inside the UN spaces, you've seen that as well. And I'm wondering if, Pavit, if you have an idea for what's next and how you would like to see in a larger scale, your solution that you have in the Hoboken schools grow to, a policy level. Would you be willing to take that step?
Yeah. So definitely, that's definitely something that I'm thinking of expanding into as much as we can. So the main goal of Cycle My Battery, the organization, is to really spread awareness, right? So spreading awareness is one of the most important things. So it reaches as many people as we can. So expanding it from the way I started in Recycle My Battery was just at my school. Then it expanded into places like the dentist's office, my martial arts center, local areas like that, my community. Then it expanded into universities. So I've partnered with universities like Stevens and NJCU to bring battery recycling awareness to their college communities. And then growing further into something like cities. So, for example, like I mentioned with the city of Hoboken, they gave me a grant to implement battery recycling and spread awareness about it in all of their schools. And then even growing further than that, so going on to something like the county level or the state level, or even a national, let's say, recycling program that we can expand into. So yes, it's always about taking chances when we can get them, and then creating a willingness for people to participate in systems that we create. Those are two really important aspects.
Thank you for saying that. And you have created another. I was just thinking that this relates to what Adrian was saying just a moment ago, that you've found a way to work with other generations, obviously, to get your work done. And you've been able to effectively communicate your goals and your plan and activate that plan. And so I was thinking a lot of a lot of what we do is even like on the scale of international relations. A lot of us here are from all over the world and online as well. And what Adrian was just mentioning is that there is like an intergenerational approach to success that we've all, like your father, introduced you to this link for the job and this sort of thing, that we have resources around us that are intergenerational and like creating like a skill set with communicating within these intergenerational spaces might also require some reframing, like YY was saying, and to have your conversation along with them and co-create solutions. Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for saying that about working with the school systems and everyone, because it's immediately apparent to me that you are able to effectively communicate with all generations.
Yeah, and kind of continuing on to that, in terms of ensuring youth participation, there's two aspects to it. Firstly, we need to have a willingness to participate, and then we also need to have the right systems. So in terms of willingness to participate, that's something that should really be developed from a young age in the school system, like you mentioned. And that sparks a kid's interest that they'll kind of carry with them throughout their life. And that may require an incentive at first. So, for example, for the battery recycling program, when I first started at my school, over the span of let's say about a month, I was only able to collect a handful of batteries, like enough to fill one handful. Then, very recently, we piloted a recycle my battery pizza challenge in my school, where each class would compete, see who could get the most batteries to recycle, and that class would win a pizza party. And with that kind of added incentive, we collected about 3,000 batteries in 1 month.
Yeah.
So with that added incentive, you can kind of make sure that the kid carries that lesson of something that we're doing with them throughout their life. And then slowly you can remove that incentive. And then naturally, the person will get like, oh, I'm doing something wrong if I don't recycle batteries.
Right.
So it may require like an incentive at first, but it's definitely really important to kind of ingrain that in their mind at a very young age.
I was just thinking like the carrot versus the stick approach. Like what can,
Yes.
because changing behavior is really hard. So that is an awesome idea. I was also just thinking like, bringing it a little bit back to journalism just for a second, the power of positive stories also to move the needle. Like there's so much negativity out there. We're working on a study right now, I can't say much about it, but it was extremely impactful, affecting the lives of millions of people in Bangladesh. I can't say too much more about it, but it was a little change that has significantly affected the health of millions. So things like that, really positive, impactful stuff. So
Can I ask you where you are in the story process with that? I mean, I know that you're not like at liberty to talk about what it is exactly or what the solution is, but with the story planning, it sounds like this is something that you're definitely going to want to bring the story of how this happened to people because it is such a positive story. What things are you already thinking about now in positioning that story for how it can appeal to people and how, will catch on?
I mean, the same way we kind of prepare most stories, honestly. So we work on a press release and then we work with our media folks to kind of elevate it. So nothing special.
But I think that these are things that practical ways that people can these are things to know. When you have an initiative and you want to get the word out about it, write a press release. That's a really great thing you can do, and you can get AI to help you do it if you need to. Because it's not so exclusive that you can't figure out how to do it yourself.
That's true.
Sometimes you just have to be your own agent, establish
and make
that
it
agency.
tight.
Make it short. Right. If you can do
Succinct
it
if you can.
if you can do it in a whole page, try to do it in a
paragraph like
instead.
one paragraph. Get your point across. Really important because people are just bombarded with stuff. I mean, editors. Again, I'm speaking as a journalist, not a policy person, but like they're just bombarded with info all day. Like make it tight and make it,
short, concise,
resonant.
Succinct to get your points across, and also like why you with your filmmaking. That's probably
Exactly.
There's something to be said for brevity. I think.
Can I also add a point on
Sure.
positive story? So I think nowadays it's because the society is very polarized. So I do think that when we communicate, we also have to consider what are the people across the aisle would think about and how they would take it. Because for example, like nowadays, actually there are some proposal in the U.S. Carbon tax. In the past, it's not thought about, but actually how to make that happen. You make those on the right think about, hey, that's a tariff. So for them, that's easier to understand, and they are more willing to take that. So if that can achieve our goal, how can we frame that in a positive way, in a way that people across the aisle will not like immediately just get attacked? I think that's also quite
Right, because you want to attract, I mean, I think that's the main idea, is that you want to attract the solution-minded people to you, whomever they may be. And I think we have some questions in the audience. We have a question on the front row, and we have, by the way, just 5 minutes left, so everybody up here needs to keep that in mind, and please.
Yeah. So hi everyone, I'm Rarsha, and I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. It's really inspirational for me as a youth myself, like a 15-year-old, to see what you guys have accomplished and still doing. But I think a question I have is that given the scientific urgency of the damage climate change has done and will do in the future, which we all know of, okay, why is it that that there isn't much meaningful political or public action that lacks so significantly in the press right now? And why are what are the institutional or physiological barriers that are so overlooked when it comes to climate change and the impacts it's going to have on everyday life of people? Even if you're in the U.S. or even if you're in third world countries, I think the impact is the same, and every person suffers from it.
Okay, question about the media. Let's take a couple of questions and then we'll. Yes. Okay.
Hi, I just want to say thank you guys so much for coming out. It's a pleasure to hear all your points. But yeah, my question is that recently over this summer, I took a pre-baccalaureate course at the Wharton School where we really dive deep into ESG and that industry. And so I just wanted to ask you specifically, with like what you were saying with climate change and all these current events that are happening, how do you think the ESG market is going to be kind of changed and transformed by this?
And we'll do one more question and then we'll answer these all together. Do we have one more question in the audience for the panel? Okay, all right. Well, this is perfect timing. Now we have about 2 minutes each. Would you like to speak to the last question first?
Thank you so much for the question. So I'm currently also learning about this from my professor at SIPA, so about the ESG market. I think for us, I think that the trend, the needs, it will still be out there in terms of ESG financing. So first, for those who don't know ESG is environmental social governance framework. So usually businesses, corporates, they have to adhere to these standards to be able to access funding, to be able to access investments. And recently in the US, there's been a drawbacks in this ESG space, but Indonesia and the Asia Pacific is actually very growing because we see firsthand how companies who adhere to these standards, they actually really striving in comparison to other companies who didn't really adhere to these environmental social governance standards. And we see that I think ESG still will be relevant in the future. The terminology may be different. Maybe we don't call it ESG again. Maybe we call it transition. Maybe we call it more of adaptation to the climate change. We don't know yet. But in the end, climate risk, physical risk, transition risk will always be out there for the businesses and the private corporation. That therefore, this standardization of the company, it's very important, and not doing any harm to any. Don't forget the local communities out there who are also impacted by this large corporation who has their arms and legs in every country. So I think so to answer your question, as a youth, please be our advocate for this issue to ensure that ESG is still relevant, and then make sure no harm being done to the local community. It's always sometimes often forgotten, and also environmental risk itself.
Yeah. And to the first question that we have 1 minute. Can anyone on the other side of this panel take that question about the media?
Yeah, so I didn't quite capture the question. I'm so sorry about that. Was it about why there isn't more of this in the press right now?
I guess why isn't there's a lack of political philosophical influence in the climate change. I mean, why is it so overlooked? Because it's such an important topic to talk about. It affects all countries and every single person. So I was just curious why it's not so relevant, I guess.
So I'll restate the question for everybody at home. Why is climate so overlooked in the media? And I think what can we do?
Yeah, it's very tricky. We're in a very conservative political climate right now. I won't say more than that. We all know what I'm talking about. And it's tough. It's tough. We've felt silenced, honestly, at the climate school in some ways. So we really had to tone down a lot. I think, you keep reporting on what's happening as best you can against these headwinds. I mean, that's what we're trying to do, just report what has happened, maybe not speculating so much, because that's where I guess you get in trouble. But,
And there's something that you said earlier about saying, the message is positive, that ultimately it seems like to resonate, that was still good advice to your question, because, a positive message is going to be like a human message, like why was saying earlier.
But I think also there are so many voices out there right now. I do think that reporting is happening. You just have to kind of find it and connect with it. Again, we live in such a fractured media landscape. You have to really connect with the people that are doing the work, but there are people out there. And I think finding them and uniting in some way, getting all your voices out there to speak to the theme of the panel.
And I love hearing news of climate resilience and all of the initiatives that are taking place right now. And of course, like with this panel of, solutions and policy that is underway and happening and actually finding success. I really appreciate you so much sharing your expertise with us today. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, and thank you for coming. And wherever you are, thank you so much. Thank you. That's it for our panel. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
We
Thank
will
you
be
all.
out
I'm
here
sorry.
we'll be out here to answer questions if you'd like.
Wonderful. Yes, feel free to connect with them outside. Thank you all for attending this session. That marks the end of the formal sessions of the International Youth Conference 12. Feel free to stick around for our closing ceremony beginning shortly. I hope you have learned and networked and connected with a variety of people and learned more about the current initiatives and really been empowered to encourage global change. We so appreciate you all coming. Again, please stick around for our closing ceremony. Thank you so much.
Because you're so